Hi everyone, my name is Lior Spindel. I'm the head of the Israel Economic Mission to Chile. Very happy to be here at the Agricultural Water Summit. Thank you, Jensen Group, for the invite. Since its establishment 74 years ago, the state of Israel is facing a severe water shortage, yet it's managed to provide drinking water to the population and maintain a strong and stable agricultural sector. I would like to take a few minutes to share with you the Israeli water management model and try to explain how did Israel overcome this challenge of water shortage. Looking at the map, you can see that Israel is a long and narrow country. It is located in the Middle East, and it has a coast to the Mediterranean Sea. Climate in the Middle East is generally arid. There is a very low amount of rainfall, and actually 60% of Israel is a dry desert. Israel is a small country, approximately 20,000 square kilometers, just a bit bigger than Kinterechion. Moving forward, Israel has 9 million inhabitants. The population in Israel is growing rapidly. Israel has the highest fertility rate in the OECD countries. Now let's look at Israel's water sources. There is a small lake in the north of the country. This is the Galilean Sea. It is even smaller than Lake Viarica. And there are also two aquifers, the shore and the mountain aquifer. And so the majority of the water in Israel are concentrated in the north. At the same time, Israel has over 1,000 industrial plants, 200,000 hectares of agriculture, and 14,000 agricultural farms. So the need for water is quite clear. 6% of Israel's water supply is shared with its neighbors, Jordan and the Palestinian Authority, and 1% of the water supply is brought back to nature in order to prevent serious damage to nature in years of drought. Let's look at Israel's water challenges, which are very relevant to other countries, including Chile. First one is climate change. It is quite clear that global warming is causing reduction of natural water sources, and Israel as well is suffering from years of drought that is affecting Israel's water reservoirs. Second issue is population growth. As I mentioned, Israel has a high population growth rate. So even if people continue to consume the same amount of water on average, population growth requires more and more water every year. Also, we are damaging our existing natural sources. It's being done by pollution of water sources by the industrial plants and also by overusing our water sources. Last issue is water loss that is being done due to the leakage in the pipelines. The result of this phenomena is the following. While the water consumption in Israel is more than 2 million cubic meters per year, the water supply in Israel is about 1.1 million cubic meters per year. If you make the calculation, it is a shortage of around 45% in water supply in Israel each and every year. So what is being done in order to solve this problem? Everyone are familiar with the biblical story in which Moses performed this miracle and rose water from the rock for the people of Israel. Today, the water supply in Israel is not a miracle, but a product of modern water management program. We can see 5 main keys to the water management in Israel. Let's go over it quickly. First one is centralized institution and legal structure. Then we have the integrated water management. We will speak also about the mentality of saving water. Then we'll talk about water production, and we'll finish our presentation with talking about development and implementation of water technology. Let's start with governance and regulation. In Israel, we have a water law that states that the water is a public resource, belongs to the people of Israel. Water is managed only by the state. There is no other body that can own a water source. For example, if someone is digging in his backyard and he finds a well, the water belongs to the country. There is only one body that manages water topics, water issues in Israel, and this is the Israeli Water Authority. The Water Authority is managed by professionals, not by politicians, and it is not affected by political changes in the country. Water Authority is leading a board of representatives from all relevant ministries, and the decisions that they make are binding for all government ministries. In the past, disagreements between ministries caused a lack of ability to make decisions, and so water sector entered a state of constant stagnation. Unification of all water issues under one body enabled a faster and smoother process of water policies and decisions about water issues. The Water Authority is responsible for water pricing in Israel. It is responsible to regulate the structure of the water market in Israel. And also they set the standards for water treatment, water quality, and water supply. Let's move on. Water distribution in Israel is being managed only by one national company. It is called Mekorot. It is the national water company of Israel. They work under the supervision of the Water Authority. The national water company is responsible for water supply to municipalities, to the industry, as well as for agriculture. The company is managing the Israeli National Carrier, which is a pipeline that transfers the water from the north of the country, the area of the Galilean Sea, to the dry desert in the south of the country. The construction of this 260-kilometer large-scale water pipeline was initiated in the 50s by the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion. So you can imagine that those issues of water are actually important and keeping the government of Israel busy from day one since the establishment of the country. So the big advantage is that all knowledge and all planning is being done by only one centralized body. The third key is education and public campaigns around water issues. So each and every child in Israel know how to use less water when brushing teeth and taking a shower. Israelis know that they must call very quickly the authorities when they see a leakage in a tap or in a pipe. It is all thanks to the Israeli educational program about the importance of water saving. Habits of saving water is part of the curriculum since kindergarten to high school, alongside public campaigns with the famous Israeli phrase, "Every drop counts." Now, let's talk about the fourth key, which is creating new sources of water. Water reuse. Since the 60s, reclaimed wastewater is being used in Israel. Israel is the world leader in wastewater recycling. Nearly 90% of the wastewater in Israel is treated for reuse, mainly for agricultural irrigation. Recycling is being done through small municipal purification plants or by larger regional facilities. Let's look at the numbers. You can see that Israel is the world leader in wastewater treatment, and it is crucial for the water sector in Israel. Now I want to say a word about Shafdan. Shafdan is the largest wastewater treatment in Israel. It is located in the center of the country, serving 2 million people, 17 municipalities, and irrigating more than 60% of the agriculture in the south of the country. What you can see in the graphics, it's actually the process. The waste is pre-treated, then it's being purified at the facility. It goes through another natural filtration with sand. Then the wastewater is being stored in a groundwater reservoir where it goes through a physical, biological, and chemical process that improve the quality of the water. Eventually, the water will be sent out through a pipeline carrier to the Negev desert in the south of Israel. It will irrigate oranges, carrots, potatoes, and different types of vegetables. You can see in the photos how does those treatment centers looks like. Now let's say a few words about desalination. So in the early 2000s, a strategic government decision was made to develop large-scale desalination plants in Israel as a source of potable water, using water from the Mediterranean Sea. In 2005, the first desalination plant was inaugurated in Israel, and currently there are 5 large-scale desalination plants active in Israel. 80% of the drinking water in the country is a product of seawater desalination. Through using advanced technology, there is a reduction in costs as well. Now you can see some of the photos of those plants. These days, the 6th desalination plant is being built, and the 7th is already in the planning stage. Additional desalination facilities will be built in the future according to the population growth and the need for water supply. Let's talk about the last key, that's the technology. So Israel is promoting innovation in the water sector with a strong ecosystem that involves the industry, academia, and government. This model brings together private entrepreneurs, water utilities, and government support to ensure that water innovation can be developed and commercialized in the country. Thanks to the technological development in the last 20 years, the use of natural water in Israel went from 77% to only 35%. This is while maintaining a regular supply of water to the public. Let's talk about key areas in innovation. So reuse and recycling, ODIS, GES, and AWS are examples that can be applied to municipalities, agriculture, and industrial sectors. GES currently has a seawater treatment plant in Likanten, Mauler region, which today has the capacity of 250 cubic meters per day. Another technology is the dripping system. There is no flood irrigation in Israel, only water pressure irrigation, sprinklers, or drippers. As everyone are paying for water in Israel, the agricultural sector has a very strong incentive to use technologies that saves water. Netafim is the company that invented the drip irrigation system, is active in Chile, as well as the other companies that appear here on the screen. They are all operating in Chile. Lastly, I want to talk about water management systems. So remote management, sensors, monitoring are all helping to sustain an efficient water system. For example, there is solutions that allow to measure and identify leakage in pipelines. The solution of Kura pipe, for example, allows fixing the leakage without opening the pipes. Utilis solutions perform satellite monitoring to mitigate flood risks. So the result of all of that is the total water loss in Israel for leakage is around 11%. It is half of the European average. Other countries sometimes has over 30% of water loss because of this leakage. I want to finish with just giving an example of water control center in Israel that is actually measuring all of the water from all resources like wells, pump, treatment plants, and others. The measurements are transferred online to the control center of the Water Authority. And based on this data, it is decided every year whether to use the natural water reservoirs or water from the desalination facilities. So in conclusion, we spoke about national water system that connects all infrastructure. We talked about large-scale reuse or treated wastewater for irrigation, efficient irrigation technologies, development of large-scale desalination. We spoke about the support for innovation, and also about public awareness and education. So this is all in all the water management model in Israel. I would like to thank you and goodbye.